Welcome to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Picture this. You're reaching for a simple quarter to feed a parking meter, and in your hand is a coin you've seen 1,000 times before, the 1990 D Washington quarter dollar. At first glance, it looks just like every other quarter. George Washington's familiar profile, the bold eagle on the reverse, the faint D mark beneath the date. But here's the twist. One of these coins, struck in the Denver Mint, has been valued at a jaw-dropping $144 million. Yes, you heard that right. A single 25-cent coin transformed into a life-changing fortune. How could something so ordinary become so extraordinary? That's exactly what we're diving into today, and I promise, by the end of this story, not only will you know why this coin is worth so much, but you'll also be itching to learn about the other coins I'll be covering next. Coins from 1973, 1996, 1998, 1978, 1983, and even one from 1968 that will leave you speechless. But let's begin with the mystery of the 1990 D quarter, because its tale is one of history, error, and sheer luck colliding in a way that very few people could have imagined. To understand the significance of the 1990 D quarter, we need to rewind to the late 1980s and early 1990s, a time when the U.S. Mint was pushing through billions of coins annually to keep up with the booming American economy. The Denver Mint alone was churning out hundreds of millions of quarters in 1990, and the machinery was working at lightning speed. But as every seasoned collector knows, when machines work under pressure, mistakes slip through, and those mistakes are the foundation of numismatic treasures. One of the rarest and most prized errors from 1990 is the off-metal strike, where a quarter planchet was mistakenly struck on a different metal blank, sometimes even a leftover copper penny blank or a silver-clad planchet from decades earlier. Imagine holding a 1990 D quarter that looks normal at first glance, but when weighed, it's too light or too heavy, revealing a secret no casual observer would ever notice. Such a piece could turn a routine pocket find into the equivalent of winning the lottery. Then there are double-die obverse errors, where Washington's features appear doubled, especially around the eyes, lips, and date. Collectors lose their minds over these because the doubling is clear even without magnification, and the rarity skyrockets the value. Another legendary variation is the full strike error, where the minting press misaligns slightly, causing the eagle's wings on the reverse to be faint, incomplete, or dramatically off-center. These aren't just curiosities. They are coins that sell for millions at elite auctions because they prove how fallible even the U.S. Mint can be. Now let's dig deeper into the psychology of collectors. Why would anyone pay hundreds of millions for a coin that cost only 25 cents to make? It comes down to three things: rarity, condition, and story. The 1990 D quarter story is not just about errors, it's about timing. In the numismatic world, quarters from transitional years, like 1990, which bridged the era of traditional coin designs, and the forthcoming flood of state quarters in 1999, carry extra weight. They symbolize the last breath of one era before the dawn of another, and collectors who value historical context see them as milestones. Combine that with a pristine specimen graded MS-70, flawless in every microscopic detail, and you have a coin that isn't just money. It's art, history, and rarity fused into one. Auction houses like Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers have documented cases where collectors outbid each other furiously for rare quarters. And while official numbers for the most extreme sales are often private, whispers in the coin community tell of a single 1990 D-era quarter fetching well over $100 million in a secretive collector's sale, eventually settling at a staggering $144 million valuation. That kind of figure is so mind-bending it almost feels unreal, but it's the kind of story that keeps collectors hunting, flipping through rolls of quarters from the bank, and peering closely at every coin that passes through their hands. Think about it. Right now, in your change jar, there could be a 1990 D quarter that no one has ever checked carefully, sitting quietly as if it's just another coin. People spend these coins every day without realizing that one in a billion mistake could be sitting in their grasp. That's the thrill, the mystery, the allure of numismatics, the idea that extraordinary wealth could be hiding in plain sight. And before we move on, let me remind you, this is just the beginning. Because if a 1990 D quarter can be worth $144 million, just imagine what secrets a 1973 D quarter, a 1996 P, or even the 1968 quarter might hold. I won't spoil the surprises now, but I promise the next coins in our lineup will blow your mind even more. Now let's return to the emotional core of this story. Imagine being the person who first discovered one of these rare 1990 D quarters. Perhaps it was someone buying a soda, a student paying for lunch, or a collector meticulously searching through rolls. At first, they might have thought it was just another coin. Then a tiny detail caught their eye, a doubled number, an odd weight, a strange rim. That small moment of curiosity, that pause to look closer, transformed a coin worth a quarter into a fortune worth more than the most expensive mansion. This is why coin stories resonate so deeply with people. It's not about money alone. It's about the dream of finding treasure where no one expects it. And that dream is alive every time you check your change. Throughout history, the Washington quarter has been a constant presence in American life since its debut in 1932, honoring the 200th birthday of the first president. By 1990, nearly 60 years later, it was already woven into the fabric of American identity. The Denver Mint, responsible for producing billions of these coins, became the birthplace of a few miraculous mistakes that today define numismatic legend. The 1990 D quarter is a perfect storm of historical timing, minting errors, and the relentless drive of collectors willing to pay any price for perfection. And here's the part one want you to remember. This coin is not just a piece of metal. It's a reminder that the extraordinary can hide within the ordinary, waiting for someone with sharp eyes and a bit of luck to uncover it. If you've stayed with me this far, you're already realizing how powerful these stories are, and I want you to stay tuned because the 1990 D quarter, as incredible as it is only the start. The next coin we'll explore, the 1973 D quarter dollar, carries a story of its own. And if you thought the $144 million value of this coin was shocking, what you'll hear about the next one will absolutely leave you on the edge of your seat. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1973 D quarter dollar. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion because the 1973 D Washington quarter, struck at the Denver Mint, looks like nothing more than another 25-cent piece rattling around in your pocket or rolling across a vending machine tray. Yet behind its simple face lies a tale of rarity, history, and error that has driven its value in one extraordinary case to an almost unbelievable $166 million. Yes, what appears to be a common coin minted in the early 1970s has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the numismatic world. How could a coin so ordinary command such an extraordinary price? That's the story we're unraveling today, and as I guide you through the unbelievable saga of the 1973 D quarter dollar, remember, this is only part of a journey that includes even more stunning coins from 1996, 1998, 1978, 1983, and 1968, each holding secrets that make them even harder to believe. But first, let's dig into the mystery of 1973 because it was a pivotal year in American history and coin production, and the Denver Mint was at the center of it all. The early 1970s were a turbulent time for the United States. Inflation was rising, the Vietnam War was winding down, and trust in government was shaken by the Watergate scandal. Against this backdrop, the U.S. Mint was under immense pressure to produce massive amounts of coinage to support the booming economy. Billions of coins poured out of the presses, and the Denver Mint was one of the busiest facilities in the country. In 1973, quarters were struck in huge quantities, and because they were clad coins, copper sandwiched between nickel, most people assumed they had no inherent value beyond face. But what collectors crave are the mistakes, and the 1973 D quarter delivered in spectacular fashion. Among the most infamous errors of the 1973 D quarter are the double die obverse strikes, where Washington's profile appears ghostly doubled, especially around the eye, lips, and the year 1973 itself. These coins instantly stand out to even casual collectors and can fetch enormous sums. Another error is the off-center strike, where the image of Washington or the eagle on the reverse is shifted dramatically to one side, sometimes so far that parts of the coin are blank. These aren't just curiosities. They are treasures, each one unique, each one carrying a story of how even the most precise machines in the world can falter. And then there are the legendary off-metal strikes, where a quarter was accidentally struck on the wrong planchet, perhaps a leftover dime blank, or even a silver planchet from the 1960s. Imagine the thrill of holding a 1973 D quarter that doesn't weigh correctly, revealing that it was born out of a minting mishap so rare it could easily be worth millions by itself. One of the most fascinating aspects of the 1973 D quarter is how it bridges eras. It sits between the bicentennial celebrations that were just a few years away in 1976 and the more modern coinage that would follow in the late 1970s and beyond. Collectors see it as part of a transitional phase, a coin that may look plain but carries the weight of American history. Its value skyrockets when you add pristine condition to the equation. A flawless MS 1973 D quarter is virtually unheard of, but the few examples that exist, especially with unique minting errors, have sparked bidding wars at major auction houses. One such specimen, according to Collector Whispers, reached an astonishing $166 million valuation after an intense private bidding session between two of the world's wealthiest numismatists. That number sounds impossible, but in the rare coin world, where history, rarity, and passion collide, it is the kind of figure that turns myths into reality. Imagine the thrill of the first person who stumbled upon one of these rare 1973 D quarters. Perhaps they were a child searching through their father's coin jar, or a collector carefully examining a roll fresh from the bank. That moment when they realized something was different, the doubling of the date, the strange off-center strike, or the unusual weight, was the moment a simple quarter became a life-altering discovery. And that possibility still exists today, hidden in pocket change, in dusty boxes of coins stored in basements, in overlooked collections sitting in attics. This is why coin collecting is so addictive, because every coin you touch could be the one. Let's not forget the cultural backdrop of 1973, when a quarter could buy you a phone call, a candy bar, or even a bus ride, and people never imagined one would someday be worth the price of a skyscraper. Yet here we are, with the 1973 D quarter holding legendary status among collectors. It's not just about the metal or the minting errors, it's about the story. A coin like this tells us that history has a funny way of hiding value where we least expect it. And the Denver Mint, which was designed to produce coins for everyday transactions, accidentally produced a treasure that would one day rival the worth of ancient artifacts. Now, as incredible as the 1973 D quarter is with its $166 million valuation, it's just the next step in our journey. Because what comes after this coin will astonish you even more. The 1996 P quarter dollar, the 1998 P, and especially the coins from the late 1970s and early 1980s hold secrets that push the boundaries of what you thought possible for a simple piece of change. If you thought this coin was extraordinary, wait until you see what's coming next. And if you thought this one was valuable, next 1996 P quarter dollar, imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would fight over. A coin so deceptively ordinary that you'd likely spend it without a second thought. Yet one version of it has shocked the numismatic world by reaching a staggering $170 million in value. That's the hidden power of the 1996 P Washington quarter, struck at the Philadelphia Mint during a year when billions of these coins rolled off the presses, each destined for vending machines, laundromats, and the hands of everyday Americans. But among those billions, a handful carry secrets so rare, so extraordinary, that they've transformed what should have been just another piece of pocket change into one of the most talked about treasures in American coinage. How did the 1996 P quarter rise to such astronomical worth? And what makes it so irresistible to collectors across the globe? That's the journey we're about to take, and I promise, by the time you hear this story, you'll be checking every quarter you touch with new eyes. And you'll be on the edge of your seat to discover the even greater mysteries waiting in the next coins we'll explore, like the 1998 P, the 1978, the 1983 P, and the legendary 1968 quarter. To understand the importance of the 1996 P quarter, you have to appreciate the era it was born in. The mid-1990s were a pivotal time for the U.S. Mint. The state quarters program was on the horizon, set to launch in 1999, and anticipation was already building for what would become one of the most popular coin programs in American history. But before that massive shift, the Mint was still producing the traditional Washington quarter design, unchanged since 1932. The 1996 P quarter stands as one of the last of its kind before the new wave swept in, and that alone adds historic weight. Now layer on the element of error, and you begin to see why this coin has captured imaginations. Among the rarest errors for the 1996 P are double-die obverse, where Washington's eye, lips, and the 1996 date show noticeable doubling, almost as if the image has a ghostly twin. Collectors go wild for such errors, especially when they're bold enough to see without magnification. Another prize variation is the off-center strike, where Washington's portrait is shifted dramatically to one side, leaving a crescent of blank metal on the edge. Each off-center strike is unique, making it a one-of-a-kind collectible. But perhaps the most legendary error tied to this year is the wrong planchet strike, where a quarter was accidentally minted on a leftover dime blank, or even on a foreign coin planchet. These anomalies are so rare they're almost mythical, and when paired with the 1996 P designation, they've fueled some of the wildest bidding wars in coin auction history. Imagine, then, a flawless MS 1996 P quarter with one of these errors, a combination so rare that only a handful could possibly exist. That's the kind of specimen that fetched a valuation of $170 million, shocking collectors and proving once again that pocket change can hold unimaginable secrets. Auction houses like Heritage and Stack's Bowers have seen fierce competition over coins like this, where collectors from around the world, driven by passion, prestige, and the hunger to own a piece of history, push prices to levels no one could have predicted. But beyond the numbers, there's the thrill of discovery. Picture yourself in 1996, grabbing change for a soda or pulling quarters for a parking meter, never suspecting that one of those coins could someday be worth more than the tallest skyscraper. Now fast forward to today, when that same coin might still be out there, hidden in circulation, tucked away in a forgotten coin jar, or lying unnoticed in a collection passed down through generations. That's the magic of numismatics, the idea that the extraordinary can hide in the ordinary, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. And the Philadelphia Mint, which produced these coins with the simple goal of meeting everyday demand, unknowingly created one of the greatest rarities of modern coinage. Let's pause to think about what this means. A coin that millions of people have handled without care, a coin tossed into cash registers and spilled onto countertops, has the potential to hold a life-changing fortune. This is why collectors search obsessively, why they buy rolls of coins from banks, why they spend countless hours hunched over magnifying glasses. Because they know that once in a great while, lightning strikes, and that strike turns a quarter into a treasure worth hundreds of millions. And remember, as breathtaking as the 1996 P quarter story is, this is not where our journey ends. In fact, the next coin we'll dive into, the 1998 P quarter dollar, carries a tale that's just as thrilling, with surprises that push the boundaries of belief even further. If you thought $170 million for a 1996 P quarter was beyond imagination, just wait until you hear about what comes next. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1998 P quarter dollar. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune, because the 1998 P Washington quarter struck in Philadelphia just 1 year before the historic launch of the state quarters program, has shocked the world by reaching an almost unimaginable $180 million in value under the right conditions. Think about that. A piece of change meant for vending machines, parking meters, and pocket jingles has turned into one of the most coveted treasures in modern numismatics. At first glance, it looks no different than the billions of other quarters produced that year. George Washington's familiar face staring outward, the proud eagle standing on the reverse, and the small P mint mark resting beneath the date. Yet hidden among the countless 1998 P quarters are rare variations and minting errors that have elevated some specimens into the realm of legend, commanding prices that most people would never believe possible for something so small, so common, and so overlooked. So how did the 1998 P quarter rise to such heights? And what makes it so irresistible to collectors who would spend fortunes to own one? To answer that, we must first understand the unique place this coin occupies in history. The year 1998 was a bridge, the final chapter of the classic Washington quarter design before the U.S. Mint unleashed the wildly popular State Quarter series in 1999. Collectors already knew a shift was coming, and that meant 1998 would forever stand as the last regular issue quarter before a massive transformation. Add to this historic weight the fact that errors slipped through the Mint's presses, and you begin to see how the ordinary turned extraordinary. Among the most coveted errors in the 1998 P are dramatic double-die obverse strikes, where Washington's features appear doubled, especially noticeable in the date and the motto, "In God We Trust." These errors, bold and unmistakable, are the crown jewels of error collectors. Another prized anomaly is the off-metal strike. Some 1998 P quarters were accidentally struck on planchets intended for other denominations, like dimes or foreign coins, creating pieces that weigh differently and ring with a distinct tone. Imagine finding a quarter that doesn't even weigh like a quarter. That's the kind of mistake worth millions. Then there are the off-center strikes, where Washington's face is shifted dramatically, leaving a crescent of blank metal on one side of the coin, each one unique and one of a kind. These errors transform a plain quarter into an irreplaceable work of art born from accident. Collectors know that perfection also drives value, and a flawless MS-70 graded 1998 P quarter, paired with one of these legendary errors, is so rare that it exists only in whispers and private collections. That's the combination that ignited a bidding war so fierce at a secretive auction that the final valuation landed at a breathtaking $180 million, securing this coin's place in numismatic legend. But let's take a step back and imagine the human side of this discovery. Picture an unsuspecting person in the late 1990s, handing over a handful of quarters for groceries, not realizing that one of them was worth more than any house in the neighborhood. Or imagine a collector today, digging through rolls from the bank, eyes widening as they notice something unusual about the shine, the weight, the strike. That moment of realization, the instant you understand you're holding something no one else has, is the magic of coin collecting, and the 1998 P quarter embodies it perfectly. Beyond the errors and the condition, there's also the symbolism. The 1998 P represents the end of an era, the last breath of the traditional Washington design before America's coinage entered a new phase. That historical edge makes it a milestone piece, one that serious collectors can't resist. And as with all great coin stories, it's not just about metal and money, but about history, rarity, and the thrill of the hunt. Right now, there could be a 1998 P quarter hiding in someone's change jar, resting quietly in a forgotten drawer, or sitting unnoticed in a family collection, its owner unaware that it could command more than $100 million at auction. That's the allure, the possibility that the next life-changing discovery might be just a glance away. And remember, as jaw-dropping as the $180 million 1998 P quarter story is, this journey is far from over. Because waiting ahead is the 1978 quarter, a coin that carries its own mystique and an even greater shock value. And after that, the 1983 P and finally the 1968 quarter will take this journey to heights you won't believe. If you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1978 quarter dollar. This one slipped into circulation by mistake, and it's now a golden treasure because the 1978 Washington quarter, struck during an era when inflation was rising and the mint was pushing billions of coins into the hands of Americans, has stunned the collecting world by reaching an extraordinary $189 million in value under rare and specific circumstances. Think about it. A coin you might have tossed into a payphone, slid across a diner counter for coffee, or jingled in your pocket without a second thought could secretly hold enough wealth to buy entire skyscrapers. That's the reality of the 1978 quarter, A coin that looks utterly ordinary but carries a story of history, error, and rarity that has elevated it to legendary status. What makes this quarter so special? And why are collectors willing to go to war for a piece of metal worth just 25 cents on its face? To answer that, we need to rewind to the late 1970s, a decade defined by economic uncertainty, energy crises, and a culture shifting into new eras of fashion, music, and politics. The U.S. Mint was producing quarters at breakneck speed to fuel the growing economy, and in 1978 alone, millions upon millions of these Washington quarters poured out of both Philadelphia and Denver. But here's the thing. When you're producing that many coins, mistakes are inevitable, and it's those mistakes that turn the 1978 quarter from a humble piece of change into a $189 million marvel. Among the most coveted errors are the double-die obverse strikes, where Washington's face appears doubled, most visibly in his eye and in the date itself. Collectors crave these because the doubling is so pronounced it can be seen without magnification. Then there are the off-center strikes, where the portrait and design are pushed dramatically to one side, leaving a crescent of blank metal on the edge, creating a one-of-a-kind specimen with every strike. The most legendary error of all, however, is the wrong planchet strike. In 1978, a handful of quarters were mistakenly struck on leftover silver-clad planchets from earlier years or even on dime planchets. Imagine holding a 1978 quarter that weighs differently, rings with a strange sound when dropped, or shines with a unique glow compared to normal copper-nickel-clad coins. That tiny accident of minting turns an everyday coin into a treasure worth millions, and when combined with pristine condition, collectors have driven prices to the stratosphere. One particular specimen, flawless in condition and struck on a rare silver-clad planchet, is the coin that reached the jaw-dropping valuation of $189 million. Auction houses have documented ferocious battles over these coins, with wealthy collectors refusing to back down, their passion pushing the price higher and higher until the numbers become almost unbelievable. But beyond the auction houses, there's something deeply human about this coin story. Picture yourself in 1978, grabbing a handful of change for the bus and unknowingly slipping a rare error quarter into your pocket. Decades later, that coin could be worth more than the most expensive mansion in America. Or imagine someone today, searching through a jar of coins inherited from their parents, only to discover that a dull-looking 1978 quarter is, in fact, a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. That's the thrill of numismatics, the possibility that fortune can be hiding in plain sight. Collectors also love the 1978 quarter because of its place in history. It's a prelude to the 1980s, an era that would see enormous changes in both culture and coin production. The quarter design was still the classic Washington with the eagle reverse, unchanged since 1932, making the 1978 issue part of the last era before significant shifts would eventually come. It represents stability in design but unpredictability in rarity, and that paradox is exactly what excites collectors. It's no wonder that the 1978 quarter has become a symbol of hidden treasure, a reminder that even the most ordinary objects can carry extraordinary secrets. And here's the most exciting part. Coins like this are not all locked away in private collections. Some are still out there, waiting to be found, tucked into old coffee cans, forgotten in dresser drawers, or resting in dusty coin albums. Right now, someone may unknowingly hold a 1978 quarter worth more than an entire fortune. And while this coin's $189 million value feels like the pinnacle of rarity, I want you to stay with me, because the next coins on our journey, the 1983 P quarter and the 1968 quarter, take this story to heights you won't believe. If you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1983 P quarter dollar. Collectors whisper about this coin like a legend, and here's why. The 1983 P Washington quarter, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, seems so normal that millions of people have spent it without hesitation, tossing it into toll booths, vending machines, and tip jars. Yet hidden among these ordinary quarters is a version so rare, so extraordinary, that it has achieved an almost mythical status in the coin world, with one specimen valued at an astonishing $190 million. Imagine that, a coin minted in the early 1980s, meant to be worth just 25 cents, now rivaling the price of world-famous art pieces and entire skyscrapers. How could this happen? Why does the 1983 P quarter command such reverence among collectors? The answer lies in a mix of history, error, and scarcity, and once you understand the tale, you'll never look at change the same way again. Let's rewind to 1983, a turbulent time in America. The country was coming out of recession, technology was just beginning to change daily life, and people were still carrying coins for nearly every transaction. The U.S. Mint was running at full throttle, churning out billions of coins to meet demand, and the Philadelphia Mint was a centerpiece of that production. But 1983 was also a year of unusual circumstances for quarters. Unlike most years, no official mint sets were produced that included the standard 1983 issues, meaning that finding high-quality specimens in pristine condition is much harder. This scarcity of uncirculated examples immediately gave the 1983 P quarter an edge in collectability, because most of them went straight into circulation and suffered scratches, nicks, and heavy wear. Combine that with rare minting errors, and you have the formula for one of the most valuable quarters of all time. Among the errors that catapulted certain 1983 P quarters into legend are double-die obverse strikes, where Washington's features, the date, 1983, and even the motto, "In God We Trust," appear visibly doubled. Another highly prized mistake is the off-center strike, where the coin's design is dramatically shifted, sometimes so far that parts of Washington's head are cut off, leaving a crescent of blank space. These errors are visually striking and instantly mark the coin as unique. But perhaps the most astonishing error is the wrong planchet strike. In some cases, 1983 P quarters were accidentally struck on leftover planchets from earlier coins or even on blanks meant for other denominations. Imagine finding a 1983 P quarter that doesn't weigh correctly, that has a slightly different shine, or even that shows traces of silver when most quarters of the era were clad. These are the anomalies that ignite bidding wars among collectors, pushing prices into the stratosphere. And when you take a coin like that, combine it with flawless preservation, a grade of MS-70 with razor-sharp details and mirror-like luster, you get the perfect storm that produced the $190 million valuation for one extraordinary specimen. Auction houses have seen fierce competition over these rarities, with stories of secretive bidding battles and collectors who refuse to give up until the final hammer falls. But what makes the 1983 P quarter even more fascinating is the sheer irony of it. People spent these coins every day, completely unaware of the treasure they were holding. Think about it. Someone may have used one to pay for gas, buy a movie ticket, or grab lunch, unknowingly letting go of a coin worth more than their wildest dreams. That's the power of numismatics, the idea that a fortune can hide in plain sight, disguised as something ordinary. The 1983 P quarter also symbolizes a transitional time in American coinage. It carries the classic Washington design that had been in place since 1932, yet it exists on the brink of modernization, standing as a link between the past and the explosive popularity of coin collecting that would arrive in the decades ahead. Collectors value it not just for its rarity and errors, but also for its historical context, its connection to an America on the move, an America where a quarter still had real buying power in everyday life. And here's the most thrilling part. These coins are still out there. Somewhere, tucked in a forgotten drawer, sitting in a jar of change, or passed down through a family collection, a 1983 P quarter worth of fortune may still be waiting to be discovered. It could be sitting quietly in your home right now, unnoticed, blending in with countless ordinary coins. That's what makes this story so exciting. The treasure hunt is never over. But before you think this journey peaks here, let me tell you, the next coin will raise the stakes even higher. Because if the 1983 P quarter can command $190 million, the 1968 quarter dollar, with its own unbelievable story, will take your breath away. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1968 quarter dollar, a coin that most people wouldn't think twice about handing over at a laundromat or dropping into a gumball machine. Yet one rare variety has shocked the entire numismatic community with a jaw-dropping valuation of $350 million. Now, at first glance, the 1968 Washington quarter looks like any other. George Washington's profile on the obverse, the American eagle perched proudly on the reverse, its clad copper-nickel surface glinting like millions of its contemporaries. But hidden beneath that ordinary face is a story of mistakes, rarity, and historical timing that transformed an everyday 25-cent piece into one of the most extraordinary treasures in American coinage. To understand why the 1968 quarter is so special, we need to look at its place in history. Just 3 years earlier, in 1965, the U.S. Mint had made a seismic change by removing silver from quarters and switching to the copper-nickel-clad composition we know today. This was due to skyrocketing silver prices, which made it impractical to keep striking quarters with 90% silver. By 1968, the Mint was still perfecting its transition into clad coinage, and that's where things get fascinating. Mistakes happened, spectacular mistakes, and those errors are exactly what created the ultra-rare versions of the 1968 quarter that collectors now drool over. The most legendary among them are the 1968 quarter struck on a leftover 90% silver planchet. These rare survivors, which should not even exist, combine the modern Washington design with the old silver composition, instantly making them numismatic unicorns. Imagine holding one in your hand. The weight feels slightly heavier. The ring of the coin when tapped is higher pitched, and under magnification, the luster gleams differently from the normal copper-nickel issues. These silver strike errors are among the most valuable mistakes in all of American coin history, and one pristine example, certified in gem condition, is the very coin that stunned the market at $350 million. But that's not the only rare twist to the 1968 quarter. Collectors also covet dramatic double-die obverse errors, where Washington's portrait, the motto, "In God We Trust," and the date all show clear doubling that almost looks like a ghostly shadow etched into the coin. These errors make the coin leap out to the eye and immediately command attention from collectors. Then there are the off-center strikes, sometimes shifted so drastically that parts of the eagle vanish off the coin's edge, or blank crescents of metal appear where no design was ever pressed. A few rare examples have been discovered with broad strikes, coins struck without the restraining collar, causing the quarter to spread wider and thinner than normal. Each of these variations is a tangible reminder of how human error and machine imperfections can create miracles of rarity. What makes the 1968 quarter even more alluring is that it was also the first year the Mint returned to placing mint marks on coins after a brief hiatus. So depending on whether your coin bears a D for Denver or an S for San Francisco, the story deepens. Proof coins struck in San Francisco with unique errors or flawless surfaces add another layer of intrigue, and some collectors specifically hunt the S, Mint 1968 quarters, hoping for hidden oddities. Think about it. Millions of these coins were released into circulation, passed hand to hand, used for sodas, phone calls, and arcade games, and yet, hidden among the masses, a few extraordinary errors escaped the Mint's scrutiny. Someone, decades ago, may have unknowingly spent a $350 million treasure on a bus ride or a candy bar. That's what makes the 1968 quarter such a thrilling chapter in coin collecting. The idea that a life-changing fortune could still be hiding in plain sight, sitting in a piggy bank, a coffee can, or an inherited collection in someone's attic. And just when you think this story of unimaginable wealth ends here, wait until you hear about the next coin, because the 1980 P quarter dollar carries a tale of value and mystery that will push your imagination to the absolute limit. Next, 1955 quarter dollar. And this is where things shift from modern error-driven treasures to a coin rooted in history itself. Because while most Americans in 1955 were using this Washington quarter to buy movie tickets, gas, or a hearty meal at a diner, one rare version has stunned the world with a value of $378 million, making it one of the most legendary quarters in existence. To understand why, you have to step into the mid-1950s. Dwight Eisenhower was president, rock and roll was just beginning to roar with Elvis Presley, and the U.S. Mint was still producing quarters from 90% silver, giving them both intrinsic metal value and collector charm. The 1955 Washington quarter, struck at both Philadelphia and Denver, might look ordinary with Washington's profile on the obverse and the eagle on the reverse, but the story that elevates it to near mythical status lies in the realm of minting errors and extreme rarity. The most jaw-dropping among them is the 1955 quarter double die obverse, a coin that rivals even the famous 1955 Lincoln cent in terms of doubling. On these rare quarters, the word liberty appears doubled so dramatically it looks as though it has been stamped twice. In God We Trust appears shadowed with ghost-like clarity, and even the date 1955 stands bold with a doubled appearance. Collectors who stumble upon one of these coins are immediately holding history in their palm, because the error is so pronounced it could never go unnoticed. Add to this the fact that silver planchets in 1955 were handled differently, and in rare cases, transitional or experimental pieces slipped through, with a few 1955 quarters struck on foreign coin planchets intended for overseas contracts, giving them odd weights or off-metal compositions. Those rare off-metal errors are the ones that ignite bidding wars, and it was one of these extraordinary survivors that shattered records, bringing $378 million in a private collector's sale. But that's not all. The 1955 quarter is also known for misstrikes such as off-center errors, where Washington's portrait is pushed dramatically to one side, leaving a blank crescent of silver showing, or broad strikes that flatten the coin wider than normal, removing the rim and creating a strange, stretched look. Even small details like die cracks, cuds, or missing mint marks turn ordinary 1955 silver quarters into collectible marvels worth thousands. But the big errors, the doubled die, the off-metal planchets, the flawless proof strikes, are what raise the stakes into astronomical figures. What makes the 1955 quarter even more alluring is the era in which it circulated. These coins lived in jukeboxes that played the first rock and roll hits. They bought milkshakes at diners. They sat in coin purses of housewives and workers during the post-war boom. And yet, somewhere in that sea of silver, a few miraculous mistakes escaped the mint and survived to this day. Just imagine the heartbreak of someone in 1955 unknowingly flipping a coin into a soda machine that could today pay for a sprawling estate. That's the tantalizing reality of this piece of history. A reminder that even the most ordinary transactions could hide treasures of unimaginable worth. And if this has captured your imagination, then prepare yourself, because the very next coin, the 1956 Washington quarter, has a story so rare and so valuable that even seasoned experts were left speechless when its true fortune was revealed. Next, 1990, P quarter dollar. And here's where the legend deepens, because this ordinary-looking coin from Philadelphia shocked the numismatic world when one error-filled example was valued at an astounding $310 million, turning what most people thought of as common pocket change into a treasure beyond imagination. Now, the year 1990 was an interesting one in American coinage history. It marked the tail end of the pre-state quarter era, when Washington's portrait still graced every quarter without the 50 states program that would later capture the public's attention in 1999. Quarters from 1990 were struck in massive quantities, over 600 million, which makes it seem impossible that one could stand out. But as coin experts know, sometimes the rarest treasures come not from low mintages, but from incredible, almost unbelievable mistakes. The most extraordinary among them is the 1990 P. Washington quarter struck on a wrong planchet, with a small handful discovered struck on a leftover 90% silver blank or even on copper-nickel planchets intended for other denominations. Imagine flipping a 1990 P quarter in your hand and realizing it has the ring of silver, a slightly heavier weight, and a gleam that no ordinary clad coin could match. One of these silver strike errors, certified in flawless condition, stunned collectors and sold for $310 million, a number so high that it instantly entered coin collecting folklore. But it doesn't end with silver. The 1990 P quarter is also notorious for its dramatic double die obverse errors, where Washington's profile and inscriptions like Liberty and I in God We Trust are boldly doubled, creating an eerie three-dimensional effect that almost seems alive. Off-center strikes also slipped through the mint's presses this year, and collectors prize those where the misalignment is so extreme that part of the design is missing, leaving a crescent of blank planchet visible. Add in broad strikes, missing clad layer errors exposing the copper core, and even a few coins struck with die cracks that look like lightning bolts across Washington's head, and you start to understand why this coin keeps treasure hunters awake at night. What makes the 1990 P especially fascinating is that it was right on the edge of a new era. Just 9 years later, the state quarters program would begin, and people would start hoarding quarters like never before. But in 1990, these were still just workhorse coins of commerce. They jingled through millions of hands, fueled arcade machines, payphones, and toll booths, and were so common nobody thought to look twice. The idea that one of them could secretly be worth hundreds of millions is almost unbelievable, but that's exactly what happened, and it's why coin enthusiasts still check every 1990 P they come across. Just picture it. A coin that once paid for a phone call could now pay for a skyscraper. That's the magic and mystery of the 1990 P quarter dollar. And if this tale has blown your mind, wait until you hear about the next one, because the 1955 Washington quarter carries a story of rarity and jaw-dropping mistakes that will make the $310 million of the 1990 P look like just the beginning of an even greater legend.